In 4, 3. We are here. Okay. It's funny because on my screen, I'm on the left, and then KBall's in the middle, Nick's on the right, and we're both like slightly higher up in our shot than he is. So it's like dink, dunk, dink, and he's got like he's got the bright light on his face. It almost looks like we're interrogating you.
Bum bum bum.
We might interrogate you this morning.
Do it.
Okay.
I love playing off environmental cues. Let's make it happen.
I'm going to warn you, I'm not a early morning podcaster.
If you want, when you're interrogating me, I can like turn the light up so it looks like I'm a deer in the headlights.
Thinking of that surprised hamster video, I think, where he turns around. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that one.
It's old internet.
Just putting out the old channel message. I should check over on YouTube. Someone check on YouTube and make sure we're there. We're actually there.
On it.
Cool. And then we'll start the show. Okay, well, let's do a sound check again. Make sure you're loud enough.
Check, check, check. How am I doing? Yeah. Here I am.
It's good. It's good.
And we are
just
live
have to
on
remember
YouTube.
To hit the gain on my
cool.
H4 up to 85 instead of where it defaults to each time.
Ah.
That's what I've learned. And make sure, I think the one where I was sounding off, I forgot to switch it from its default mic to using this one. So it was picking up ambient rather than right in my face.
And the light's already looking better, so I think we're gonna be sitting pretty.
The sun is rising. As it rises, I will have a secondary light and it will be fine.
Awesome. We turn our soundboard live. Make sure you guys can hear this.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
About X. About X. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of love that one. But it's my baby, so I have to, you know.
Did you try redoing it with Stable Diffusion?
Well, Stable Diffusion doesn't have they haven't done audio yet, you know. It's all video, it's all images. But the Stability CEO did tweet out that they're working on audio right now. So that's coming.
Yeah, and Meta just had that video one.
Yeah, that was interesting.
They didn't actually release like any, you can't use it. So
right,
maybe they just like, cherry pick the best ones.
Right. Well, I did download OpenAI Whisper and ran it against our episode, our Seth Godin episode. It's pretty stinking good.
What does that do?
It does transcription. It does audio transcription. It also does audio translation. So you can go like English to French. Obviously, I didn't do that, and I can't judge if that's good or not. But I went transcripted text on our episode.
I have used Descript before. Have you used that?
Yes, a little bit.
You can like, it'll do the transcription stuff, but it'll also like, you can train it on your own voice. So you could like override your typos in your own voice.
Yeah, totally.
Amazing.
And change
if you did English
like
to Spanish, I could probably do an 80% level check on it. And I know some people who could do a lot better than that if you want.
Yeah. How cool would it be to put out our shows in a couple different languages?
Awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool.
I've been playing a game that has in-game automatic translation, which is really cool, right? Like, so just chatting with people all over the world. However, I've noticed just looking at the folks who speak Spanish, which I speak well enough to read reasonably well, the translations, like, they get it right like 70 or 80% of the time, but sometimes they actually make it so it like is coming across pretty differently than the person intended, and it's not great. So at least for like there was definitely a place where people were getting mad at each other, and it was at least 50% due to the translation, where somebody was trying to say one thing and it was coming off as a very different thing.
Yeah. That could be a problem. There's so much nuance in conversation that it's easy to lose in translation. Well, this does it did transcription with timestamping down to the phrase. So that's, and it did it in about 20 hours on my MacBook. So right now we have a human transcriber episodes. He does a great job, and however, he takes up to a week because he's doing every changelog podcast. So like, you know, he's got 5 or 6 shows a week to do. So he's, you know, a show comes out and you know, between 3 and 7 days later, it gets the transcript published. But this would be much faster. However, what it doesn't do is speaker attribution, which he does do. So like KBall's talking, then Nick, then Jerod, like it doesn't do that part. So we can't really use it in earnest without a major regression until it does that.
Descript does do that.
Yeah, but does Descript have an API or something?
I don't
I have to
know.
like drag my files into Descript because that ain't gonna work.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
know
we
how
need
that
like a
works.
workflow that fits into stuff because you just can't. It doesn't scale with
Yeah.
as many podcasts as we do. But it is a really sweet tool. I love how you can like just edit the text and it edits the audio. It's so cool.
Yeah. I've been playing with this app called Charlie on my Mac.
Yeah.
It's a GUI for Stable Diffusion, and
Okay.
it's so cool.
It's better than the Diffusion B one that I've been using.
Only in well, yes, because you can tweak things. You can say like, do this many passes on things, and
Yeah.
like I have more RAM, right? I have a Mac Studio, so I like crank it way up, and it takes longer,
Right.
but it's way better quality. And then like it has a gallery, and it'll store the image with the phrase that you use to generate it. So I don't
That's
have to
cool.
like keep track of them separately.
Right. Yeah, the Diffusion B1, it started off really bare bones. He is working on it quite a bit. I've been following the repo on GitHub because
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm waiting for the image to image. Does it have image to image?
No,
That's
will
what
be,
I want.
There's something else. I watched a YouTube video on it of something using Stable Diffusion locally, but it was like, I can't remember the name of it, but it lets you inject your own bits of training into the model without corrupting it. And so you could like take, 10 pictures of yourself and then have every photo that you create, like include your face in it in different ways.
That's
And so I'll find the YouTube video, but they made a whole story, like a whole like Lord of the Rings style story with like
with
the
themselves.
characters. Yeah.
Love it. We're so narcissistic. We're like, you know what? I need to inject myself into this. Okay, should we start? We're just gonna let it flow. Obviously, we'll just round robin. Do you want me to intro? This is not we're not gonna do story of the week. Like this is just like news. So it's a news discussion show. We'll just go through the headlines. Do you want me to introduce all of them and discuss, or do you want to take turns? Does anybody care? I can always
Whatever
just
you
I can
prefer.
intro it and pass it off to the person who entered it. And, we can do whatever.
And I assume since we have no structure, we're just kind of riffing wherever we want to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll redirect back to the next story if it gets way out there. But if it's, or I won't. I don't know. I can't promise anything.
Never know what you're gonna get if you let me just riff.
That's true. All right.
Plus Nick's puns, right? We'll just be OODA the loop.
Oh gosh, the OODA the loop one. Did you hear I put Emma in there? You did not just say that. I
I
inserted
did
her.
not.
Yeah.
I need to go back and
It
listen to
was
that.
so good.
So
Did I
well
put
done.
a soundboard. You said that, and Emma goes, "You did not just say that," and then everybody laughs. I had to add something. I almost put it as the opener, but I felt like Austin should get the opener. But all right, here we go. Hey, it's party time, friends. I'm Jerod, your internet friend, and I'm joined by two of my friends, Nick Nisi. What's up, man? Can you hear me, Nick?
Yeah, I just cut out for a second.
What's up, man?
Ahoy, hoy. How's it going?
Going great. I'm also joined by KBall. What's up, KBall?
Ahoy, hoy! How's it going? I was thinking as Nick paused that I should just like try to do my best hoy hoy impression.
That was really good.
That was, I mean, maybe we won't even know the difference. So I have to introduce KBall again after that one. Well, it is party time. It's for us, I guess, a different time. More of a party day. We're recording on a Friday. We normally record on a Thursday. So Friday's kind of more of a party day, but we're not recording at more of a party time. It's early morning for us. This is because of internet problems yesterday. So you listening non-live, it's the same for you, but for us, we're kind of like having our coffee and talking about the news. That's the plan, at least. Hopefully it feels like a party anyhow, but it is going to be a news discussion kind of an episode. First, I thought it'd be fun to talk about some personal news. Like, what have we been working on lately? What have we been up to? I got this idea because I saw that Nick had finished this cutover. You talked about it a couple of times throughout, I think. You've been working on this switch to Vite, or was this a new thing that I didn't know about?
I've probably been talking about it. It's been going on for a little while. Very slowly replacing Create React app with Vite. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been much, much faster, and it's been kind of bringing us up into more, modern JavaScript, ES modules, things like that, which has been really, really fun. It is only one app in like a very, very large monorepo full of apps. So there's lots of Create React app to go. But I did fully switch out and remove React scripts, which meant like reconfiguring Jest to like manually have that configured and then delete it. And then I did it for a second app last night in the monorepo, and it took like an hour. So like very exciting because I've already hit all of the pitfalls that are possible, I'm pretty sure. So like I just hit them and I was like, oh yeah, I know how to fix that. I know how to fix that, and just carried right
That
along.
does feel good once you've already, it's like playing the same level that you've already played previously on Mario Brothers or something. You're like, I can just cruise through this level. I know all the particulars.
Sometimes that just feels good.
That first migration is a lot harder than it feels like it should be, though. I did a similar migration beginning of this year, last year, something like that. And, we have not a Create React application, but we were using Webpack and all these things, and we migrated to Vite. And like, it took like, there was like a week that I was focused on it, and then there was like trickle on work for like that was fitting in around the edges for a couple weeks after that before we finally got it switched over.
Oh yeah. And we had to really start like lower level because we were on like older versions of everything. We had Node 14, so we had to get up to Node 16 at least to continue with that. And then like, we had to upgrade the version of Storybook we were using. And then we used the Storybook Builder Vite to replace its Webpack build with a Vite build. And honestly, that was the most like startling of changes because Storybook would take like over 90 seconds to start up. And when I switched it over to Vite, 3 seconds tops.
Nice.
That's the type of speed up we saw with Vite. Well, and that's interesting. So we have been using a Storybook equivalent called Ladle that somebody built specifically when Storybook didn't support Vite. And so it was like, okay, this is way faster and all these sorts of things. But we run into some limitations because it's not all of Storybook. And so hearing that Storybook itself sped up that much moving to Vite, that might be an argument that we actually don't need this like slightly less supported variant just for performance.
That would be, yeah. I'm still, I like Storybook, but it's still difficult and the documentation is tough. But it makes for much faster like component level development, which I really, really like.
Yeah, that was the win we got. Especially like we have our development environment still references a cloud database, which means that local development can be often very slow, and cutting that out of the loop is amazing.
Yeah. There's some like we have some internal packages as well that we consume, and I actually converted those to like ship both a CommonJS and ESM version so that we could use either with different projects. And I didn't switch it to Vite, but I switched it to ESBuild, which is the Go library that Vite uses. And it was going from like I don't know, 10 seconds to build those projects to like 300 milliseconds. Like it was just ridiculously fast. But then yes build, all it does is ignore the types. It doesn't actually provide that. So if you want to like ship a
Nice.
library and have the type definitions with the library, you have to also do that. So it's like, oh, we can switch this to ESBuild and get it down to 300 milliseconds and then add 6 seconds to generate types with the TSC compiler.
Ignoring the types, that just sounds like something I should get into.
There you go.
I ignore the entire type script, not just the types themselves.
Nick Nisi, there's a project for you. TSC compiler built with Go.
I hear that it's not super possible right now, at least. But there are some cool projects out there, and maybe we'll talk about some of them today. But like referring back to what Jerod just said, it's only a matter of time, Jerod.
Well, you can continue to say that, and you could be right, but it could be a matter of a long time. You know, I'm incredibly resolute. You'll find.
Well,
Oh, I know.
so types help me as an individual, but what really made them blow my mind is when I'm working with a team and trying to help refactor and prevent issues and help people refactor. And like, Jerod,
Yeah.
you're like basically a solo developer still, right? Like I know you work with
Totally.
a couple folks on changelog, but
Yeah.
I feel like they can be helpful for an individual, but like a lot of the value prop is, okay, you have these larger teams that are trying to understand APIs and refactor APIs,
Right.
and like having both the auto doc type stuff and the refactoring assurance is just such a huge win.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when it boils down, I'm trying to think of the episode. I think it was the Dino Fresh episode where Luca Casanato pinned me to the table because I was just giving him a hard time about TypeScript because Nick wasn't there. I had to give somebody a hard time. And he eventually pinned me down and started talking about all these benefits and stuff. And I said, at the end of the day, it's just solving problems that I don't have as a solo dev. I just don't have those problems. And so for me, it's just additional tooling, additional things. Now it's getting to be where it's like built more and more in, but I just don't have these problems. Now, working on teams, I can totally see those upsides, and I'm sure they outweigh the downs.
Well, and honestly, that's the type of optimization we should all be making, right? Going back to the React debate episode, right? Like if you're working on a relatively static site, why the heck are you using React? It's solving
Right.
problems you don't have.
Totally. In fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day who was telling me that our entire website should be on Next.js. And I was like, I don't know, it's pretty good. Like it works pretty well as is. It's an Elixir backend, JavaScript sprinkles, front end, server side rendered HTML. And I just asked them, I said, what do I gain by rewriting my entire website in Next.js besides being able to say it's on Next.js? And I said it's cached all around the world really fast, and I'm sure there are some gains, but what a huge undertaking. And so it's really like,
I wouldn't be sure there's some gains.
well, that's how I hedge. I say I'm sure there's some gains because I don't know, what they all are, and I don't want to be bullheaded about it. But hard to convince. Why rewrite when you don't have to? Like it just doesn't make any sense. But because everyone's using Next.js now, it should be in React. Now, when it comes time to do a redesign or something, we're going to revisit what we use, and at that time, we're going to try to do our best to make a sound decision. But yeah, use the right tool for the job, and the hard part is figuring out what that tool is. The easy thing to do is to just use the popular thing, and that's not always the right tool for the job.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on from Nick's personal news. I've been shipping some stuff lately. We shipped chapters support across all
Yes.
changelog podcasts. This was a long time desire of mine and a feature we've been working on, not straight through, but off and on for the last 3 or 4 months. There was one big technical hurdle, which is that we were previously doing all of our ID3 tags on the MP3s by shelling out to FFmpeg. And FFmpeg is an amazing tool with lots of features. I mean, the longest man page in human history because it's so many features, but one
That's how
feature
you know
does
it's
not
good.
have. Yeah. One feature FFmpeg does not have is the ability to write ID3 V2 chapters, which is like this special addendum to the V2 spec. And the FFmpeg folks are not interested in it because it's very much an audio thing. And That's more a video tool, generally speaking. So we needed a way of writing those tags in Elixir. So we worked with our friend Losh Vikman, who wrote an ID3v2 Elixir library for us, which we open sourced. And then I took that, integrated it into our stack, and we are now chaptering all of our shows, which feels really cool. I've been talking about it a lot. I'll put some blog posts into the show notes for people who are interested in the details of that. But I'm about done talking about it. We've covered it, and happy to have it out there. And we're just going to keep chaptering our shows. So if you're listening in a podcast app that supports chapters, unlike Spotify, then check it out. It's right there. You're in a chapter right now. You can see what's coming up next. You can skip to cooler parts of the show or whatever you want to do. And that's probably the biggest thing we've shipped in terms of like a technical change to our podcast since we added transcripts.
Wait, and are you manually deciding the chapter names?
Yep. So as producers, we decide the chapter names.
So you have like 10x'd your workload in terms of figuring out titles.
Yes. So you used to have to title one thing on the show and then a subtitle. And now we have to title that still, plus every single chapter has some sort of a title, which is actually kind of fun though. I'm starting to like put little jokes in the chapter names and stuff because you realize that most people don't care and really might get a laugh out of it. So that's actually kind of been a nice creative outlet. It has added probably 20 to 30 minutes to our overall production flow, like because they got to be there and we want them to be good. If they're not good, what's the point? So yes, I have to do a lot of titles, but they're like lower stakes titling. You know, it's like naming your fourth kid versus the first one.
What's your fourth kid's name, Jerod?
Sorry, Nora. No, she's 5. Ezra. Sorry, Ezra. I threw you under the bus. KBall, what have you been working on lately? I don't see anything in the doc.
Yeah, well, so that's the fun thing about being a manager is it's really hard to like point to something concrete that I did. I was
Answer
thinking
some
about
emails?
this.
Schedule some meetings.
Lots of meetings. Yeah, one of the fun things I get to do is scare engineers off from being managers because anytime they need to schedule something with me, they open up my calendar, they look at it, and they go ah and run away. Yeah, I did an all-day planning meeting the other day. That was fun. I got to tell a lot of people, no, you can't put 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. Can you please tell me which 5 pounds is the most important? All of them, all 10 pounds does not
all 10 pounds.
help.
Right.
And
it's
I was
all
reflecting,
highest priority.
like as a manager, that is like half of your job is you tell one set of people, no, you can't put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Please prioritize. And you tell another set of people, please, can we make this 5-pound bag into a 7-pound bag? What do we need to do?
That's awesome. I saw a funny tweet the other day that said along the lines of, I didn't become, quote, an engineering manager. Instead, what I did was I, quote, accepted a pay raise in which I must agree to never write code again, end quote. And I was like, that's interesting.
I
wonder if you
do
ever
write
feel like
some code still, but it's pretty rare and it's declining. And in fact, you know, there's an interesting aside on this, something that came up in a retro. So I still occasionally will tech lead a project, right, where I'm doing the architecture and things. And it turns out, and that's actually pretty common in the industry. There's this like whole role of like tech lead manager, somebody who's managing a set of people and tech leading. Like lots of companies do this, and it sucks. And it sucks for a few different reasons. So I had already kind of realized why it sucked for me, because it feels like there's too many things and you can't be good at any of them. But came up in this retro a couple of other reasons it sucks. It sucks for the team because number one, you create a bad power dynamic, right? So like a tech lead needs to be making estimates. They probably need to be asking their team what's reasonable, but they kind of also need to put a line in the sand. Like, I think we can do it by this time. That's hard enough as it is, but if the person who's trying to put those lines out and asking the team, is this reasonable? Can you do it? Is their manager? Now there's a power dynamic that makes it harder for them to be clear and say no. And you can overcome some of that through relationships and other things, but that's also a structural power thing. That's not going away. So that's a problem. The other problem comes back to the calendar thing, right? If you're tech leading a project, you want to be available to everybody on that project to answer questions, help guide, do all these things. I'm in meetings from 8 till I get done with work. Like, how is that going to happen? Like, I'm not available if I'm also tech leading the project. So I thought that was a really interesting insight. And especially because, like, I had sort of thought, okay, this is not a great situation for me, but it's filling holes in the team. It's going to help us get there. But it's harming the team when you have a tech lead or a manager also being the tech lead. And so, realities being what they are, many teams, you don't have somebody else to do that. I'm thankful I do have some people who can tech lead, and we're kind of making sure that happens going forward. But it was kind of an interesting, like, I was thinking about me, but I should have been thinking about the team when it comes to why this is a bad idea.
Yeah. So does the tech lead role gain that individual material things in compensation, or is it just like a street cred thing, or
So tech lead is a really interesting thing because different companies treat it differently, and even sometimes different teams within a company treat it differently. So some people treat it as a durable thing. Tech lead is a title, it's a role, this is a thing you're doing that may come with rewards, financial or otherwise. It may not.
Right.
A lot more places, actually I wouldn't say a lot more, many other places, certainly the way my team is handling it, tech lead is a transient thing related to a project.
Right.
You are tech leading this project. And it's a set of things that are part of being an engineer, and you do them in the context of a project. So it's not like a different role, a different title, or anything like that.
Is it rotational then, or is it based on, like, some people lead better than others, or they're practiced in that? So it seems like it could be a skill thing, but is it rotational, or is it certain people are always kind of leaders and they rotate around?
I think it varies a lot by team.
Yeah.
So what we're doing on my team right now is it's not always the same person, and it has to do with a few factors. It has to do with aptitude. Is this type of project something that is in your kind of wheelhouse? It has to do with desire. Do you want to be tech leading? Is this something exciting for you, or is this something like super stressful? It has to do with your growth roadmap. Like, is this the direction that you're trying to grow right now and learn? So right now I have kind of 2 folks who are more regularly tech leading, and then I have 2 other folks where I'm looking for the right project because it's kind of in their growth stretch area. But it's a rotation and based on a number of factors.
Yeah, the ways that I've typically been in that role have been like it's been project based. So I'm the tech lead of this project or that project. And what it usually would boil down to was like I would be much more involved in like the roadmap, like discussion, creating like the technical side of the tickets, like laying down the details of what actually needs to be done to get the product built or meet whatever goals there are. And then I would spend about 50% of my time actually working on tickets, and then the other 50 is mentoring, code reviews, like shepherding that part of it through and just keeping the oil flowing. I don't know why I said oil, but keeping things flowing.
Technical project management, essentially.
Yeah.
Keep that oil flowing. Well, we want to keep the oil flowing around here as well. So we're going to take a break. That's been our personal news. Nick shipped Veet. I shipped some chapters. KBall shipped 7 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. We'll be right back, and we'll talk industry news right after this. Okay.
Now we have the downside of the sun coming up, right? It's like...
Yeah, it's like blinding you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have a shade that I can put
I was
here.
going to say you can close the blinds or something.
I don't in this room. I should get that figured out at some point. But usually this is during this exact time when it's shining right here is when I'm taking a break for breakfast or workout. So,
well, you're going to go for a long hike after this, right?
I am. Yeah.
That's
So the last time I had a Friday off 2 weeks ago, because we do that every 2 weeks. And if I'm not on call, I can go for a hike, I think. And last time I did 11 miles on my hike, which was
nice.
a wonderful hike.
That's a nice long one.
And I love the spot that I went. I'm actually thinking I might just go back and do that same hike again. It
Right.
was great.
A lot of elevation, too.
It's a reasonable amount. I think it's like 1,500, something like that, feet of elevation. And it's up and
Nice.
down.
That's a
Up
lot
and
for
down.
us here Omaha,
Mhm.
the flatlands.
Every time
You
I go on a
want to
hike,
do good hiking? California is a good place to visit. There's a
Yeah, no doubt.
incredible hiking around here.
What are you gonna say, Nick?
oh, every time I do it, I take my kids, and one of them's a toddler, and so I average about 40 minutes a mile.
Mm.
That's
Well, you're probably stopping at every bug, every stick that
Oh,
looks
yeah.
cool.
I'm tired. Carry me.
Right? Carry it. You got the piggyback ride.
Yeah.
well, honestly, that's why the every other Friday off thing is like the best perk in the world because it's time when you're not
Oh.
working where you already have childcare.
Mm.
I did not realize that was what today is for you. Like
Yeah.
you're doing. Is that like a? I think I called that a 980 when I had that for.
Yeah,
a
we
couple
call
of
it. We have
months.
recharge Fridays,
Oh,
and
that's so nice.
we're only guaranteed to have them through the end of this year. It was something that started in the pandemic, and first they were extending it like a quarter at a time, and then the end of last year they said, okay, you'll have it through the end of this next year. And there's always as it gets closer to the renewal or the time when that's going to end, there's always rumblings and are they going to cancel it and this, that, and the other. I hope. So I will say I hear like we have a new CEO recently, and was talking through with my team. How are you feeling? What are your concerns? The number one concern is, are they going to kill Recharge Fridays?
Really?
Like, I would not be shocked if they decide to kill it. If we had like 20% turnover in the
Really?
engineering
That
org
much?
from it's the favorite perk. And then there's a couple people who are like, I don't like it. It makes us less productive. I don't
Right.
actually think it does. It can create some stresses.
Yeah.
Because but
With deadlines and stuff.
yeah. But yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I gotta say, it's my favorite perk. I would
Yeah.
definitely like. I love the people I work with. I like what we're working towards. But that goes away. I'm gonna start looking around a little bit. Who knows?
Yeah.
Is it like a rotational thing? Like certain people have this Friday off, the other half have this Friday off, or is it
Everybody?
everyone?
Everybody.
Oh,
And it's
That's
You
better.
can be smarter to do opposite, like half the company on one Friday, half the company on the other Friday.
But then nobody's getting calls on their Friday off.
yeah, exactly. If you have part of the people doing it and part of people working, then they're going to be sending messages and emails, and it's going to very quickly not feel like. Now, I will say, like, customer facing folks often won't take the whole day off, or they'll check in a few things and stuff like that. And not, some people will use it like it's open. You're allowed to work during it if you want to,
Sure.
right? If that's what's going to help you recharge, basically. If it's like if you're stuck in meetings all week and you have something that you feel like you need to get done and that's your day, you're going to get it
KBall
done.
Keeps scheduling them.
That's okay.
Now, do your coworkers call you Kevin? KBall.
It's about evenly split. So I tell folks you can call hi, I'm Kevin or KBall, whichever you prefer. And it's actually really funny because some people will only use Kevin, some people will only use KBall, some people go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a set of people who really like KBall. They're like that for some reason it resonates.
It's funny whenever I see Kevin attached to you, I'm like, no, KBall.
Yeah.
Just because I've been calling you that ever since we've met each other.
I love it, honestly. Like that's I feel like there's so many Kevins in the world, and
But there's only one KBall.
certainly there aren't many
we know of.
K-balls
Yeah, that we know of.
that we maybe just one.
Maybe. Yeah, well, actually, we were just talking about you the other day because we're going back to All Things Open. And we mentioned the last time that Adam was there was when he met you,
Yeah,
which was before. And that's what led you to.
that was like
to coming on
2017 or something.
Yeah, it was like
that?
heading.
Or
It
2016.
was prior to JS Party because that's how you eventually became on JS Party, was because of that.
Yeah,
And apparently you like babysat the booth or something so he could go to the bathroom. I don't know. You did something nice that he
I
appreciated.
don't remember.
Anyways, should we
I
go back
remember
in?
we had an interview because I was a speaker, and then he told me it was going to ship, and then like it never shipped, and like he kept saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, it'll ship eventually," and then he's like, "I'm sorry, dude, it's not shipping. We lost." And I was like, "Okay, I had fun
Yeah.
talking. Like it's fine."
That's the one struggle with conferences. You record a bunch of conversations, and they're all great, and then you're like, well, we can't just ship like 30 conversations. We have to like do something. And then you have to let someone down.
Totally.
But then we invited you on JS Party and made it all better.
Hey, I have no regrets or like
Yeah.
criticisms of that. It started a relationship, right?
Yeah.
We started talking, then I got in the Slack, then we're chatting more, then we ended up
Totally.
at JS Party. Like that's I mean, and like, what was it? We had a conversation at on a JS party not long ago about like networking, right? Networking
Right.
is just talking to interesting people about stuff that you find interesting. Like if you try to do something different than that, you're doing it wrong. Networking is, hey, you like a thing, I like a thing, let's talk.
Right. I guess what do people think it is? Like, here's my business
Well,
card. You
they
give me
get
your
a
business
they get
card.
a they get a sheet that has all the sponsor names on it, and then they have to get like a stamp next to each sponsor name, and then they have completed their
Right.
networking quest, and they win a prize, right?
I think
That's pretty much how it works.
I'm trying to remember because I remember when I was first in the industry, I felt like, oh, I should network, and it felt really intimidating because everybody said, oh, how do you get places? You network, you get to the networks, right? But nobody says what is networking, right? It's like networking is connecting with people in the industry you want to get into or whatever. Well, what does that mean? Let's make it simple. Networking is talking to people about stuff that you find interesting and they find interesting. Period. End of story. Now you have a
Yeah.
relationship, and the next time you need something that they're relatively connected to, or they need something that you're relatively connected to, there's an established relationship you can lean on. You can reach out. You can say, hey, I was thinking about this thing and I saw that you're connected to this person. Do you have any advice or recommendations, or can you help me get there? Right? Like that's all it is. It's talking to people about stuff that you're interested in and building that relationship.
Yeah. So check out this networking plan we have for all things open. Here's what we're going to do, because we want to have the best booth in the building. That's our goal. And we don't have the biggest budget in the building. So here's our plan. 41-inch television, Nintendo Switch, 2 Pro controllers. Come challenge us to either Mario Kart or Rocket League one-on-one. Everybody who beats us gets a t-shirt. One of the people gets to take the Switch home at the end of the conference.
I dig
Also,
it.
we're going to be recording shows as well. So, I mean, why wouldn't you want to come to that booth? Network.
I love it.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's going to be fun. All right. Should we keep the show going?
Isn't that what we were doing?
This isn't the show right here. No, this is the in-between times.
So you say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably end up back in the show. I'm not going to lie. That was a good break. All right. Let's get back to the news here. I got to get my notes up. All right. We have a group of stories and links and things going on around the web development world. First one up is Cloudflare has made a few announcements this week. I think it's like their birthday week or something. This is a new trend I'm seeing where companies will launch a bunch of stuff in a row and really try to make a splash. I know Supabase has done that. They call it launch week, where they'll launch like 5 days in a row, one thing a day. Kind of a cool way of going out. And Cloudflare's announced a bunch of stuff this week. The one that we're focusing in on is not the Worker D, open source Worker D. We may do a full episode on that. Maybe not. Hold on. We aren't focusing on the open source Worker D, which I do think is interesting because they're taking their Cloudflare Workers runtime and they're releasing an open source version so that you can run on your own infrastructure, which is, I think, is a wise move and probably one that most clouds would do well to imitate. But the one that I actually was more excited about and honestly have already implemented on our website in a matter of 30 minutes was Turnstile. So Turnstile is a new user-friendly, privacy-preserving alternative to CAPTCHA. And CAPTCHA, as we all know, is one of the banes of our existence. Nick, let me ask you something. How many stop signs have you identified in your life?
Oh, too many.
How many trains? How many planes? How many automobiles?
Oh, they're getting worse and worse too.
It's so
I feel like I
annoying.
fail 50% of the time.
Yes.
I capture.
Yeah. I hate that it takes you, like, it'll be like, oh, identify all the ducks in this page. And there's a whole bunch of like I'm like, is a mallard a duck? You're like,
Is a mallard a duck? Or there's the one where it's like, it's a stop sign, but it crosses 2 grids, you know? And
Yeah.
like the main grid, which like, are you wanting me to have every part of the stop sign selected or just
Oh,
the
I do
main
that.
portion? I always think about that.
if there's a
'Cause you're afraid to
pixel
do
of
the wrong
stop
one
sign-
and then get rejected, you know?
But that's the thing. If it sends you to another page and asks you to do it again, did it reject you? Because I get rejected a lot.
I think that's a rejection, man. I think you're darn near a robot at this point. So Google does have their, of course, most captchas, reCAPTCHA, Google reCAPTCHA. The one that's on our website is Google based, and at the end of the day, Google is a large ad company, so you're putting their trackers on your website and requiring people to identify themselves to Google to prove they're not robots. So there's that angle as well. There's other alternatives. We tried HCAPTCHA for a while, which didn't work as well as reCAPTCHA, so we just use reCAPTCHA in anger. This is a cool alternative, and it's interesting because they're not requiring any human interaction, but they are doing a whole bunch of device challenges. Like, they're trying to identify you as a human based on different aspects of your web browser, the JavaScript runtime, kind of some stuff that we don't really know exactly all that's going on, which might be a little creepy as well.
You mean browser fingerprinting?
Yes, all sorts of things but they're guaranteeing that it's private.
In what manner are they making this guarantee?
Well, they do have this whole.
Like, are they sending network traffic back to Cloudflare, or are they keeping it all on your
They're
domain and
certainly
local?
sending stuff back to Cloudflare.
Then
They
there
certainly are.
is no way for us to verify their guarantee that they're keeping it private.
Right. Well, they do say Cloudflare has a long track record of investing in user privacy, and each one of these words is a link to something they're doing in the privacy space. And they are using this cool new technology that they developed with Apple called private access tokens, which actually allows the device and Apple, something deep down in your device that Apple can do. I don't know if it's in the secure enclave. I'm not sure how it works to actually identify this as a human without any identifying information. So there's at least collaborators there. So it's not like all Cloudflare's doing.
I mean, they might be guaranteeing your privacy, or actually keeping your privacy, I should say. But if they're sending network traffic back and we're not looking at exactly what's being sent and if there's cookies attached to it and all these things, we have no way to verify that that is actually guaranteeing privacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a kind of trust us.
Yes.
I'd rather trust them probably than Google because...
Which is why they appeal to their track record. But also you're kind of at least distributing your trust to a couple different entities. You know, like it's not all
pros
Google.
and cons
It's
to
like,
that,
well,
right? Like Google does already have all my data, so at least I'm not giving.
Resistance is futile. All will be assimilated.
I think there is some truth to that, right? And
Well, what if
you
we
think
stop giving them all so much of our data? What if we remove Google Analytics? What if we use alternatives for all these different little services that they are using to collect our information, and then all they have is our personal emails and private thoughts?
yeah,
We'll just buy those little services.
All they have then is all my emails, all my documents, all my search history, my browser history, except I use Brave, so maybe not that, but yeah.
Right.
I mean, and me, I might be a little more paranoid than the average bear, and there are a few people who are probably more paranoid than the average bear, but like 70, 80, 90% of the population, I don't see how this is going to make that big of a difference in how much info Google has about them. But that's not to say it's a bad thing. And like reCAPTCHA sucks. So like not having to deal with reCAPTCHA, that's already a huge win, right? If you can do it automatically.
Yeah.
I feel like I love the emphasis on privacy, and I think that ship has sailed for pretty much everyone.
Mm-hmm. I think that is a good point, though. Like, I hate doing those stupid CAPTCHA things. Mm-hmm. And so, like, this is like a trade-off, right, of comfort versus security. And I will pick that every time. But I am overly paranoid. And, like, half the time I have to reload Safari without content blockers to even get the CAPTCHA to show up because they're trying to block whatever creepy thing that the CAPTCHA is adding to the page to begin with.
I wonder if that'll impact this. Depends, I guess, on how creepy it looks to a content blocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've definitely had all sorts of, like, our number one support request on changelog.com is like, I can't sign up. And it's because of reCAPTCHA. Because something with their browser or they're blocking or the thing doesn't show or hides behind or whatever. And we actually had more of a failure rate with HCAPTCHA because I was trying to be just, I was trying to not use Google for a while. And I was like, this thing just doesn't work. Switch to reCAPTCHA. And here's the problem, y'all. We still get tons of bots signing up. Now, I think they're like human bots. Like, I think they're just like Mechanical Turks or something, because they're passing the reCAPTCHA. I mean, we're talking about probably a dozen a day. We get fakes, like just either spammers. They're either human spammers or they're robots that have figured out reCAPTCHA. So it's still not like solving my problem 100%, but it cuts it down from like we were getting hundreds a day before I put it on. Now we're getting like a dozen. I just installed Turnstile last night, and I will say, if you're on reCAPTCHA and you want to give Turnstile a try, literally 30-minute cutover, which is pretty fast for a rollout. It's super simple. It's pretty much the same API. You just like change the URL, change the script, and sign up and stuff. It's free for everyone, so that's cool.
You got to come back next week and tell us how it impacted your robot signups.
Yes. So they do give you a nice dashboard. I've had 38 challenges issued, 63% visitor solve rate, 47% API solve rate. I don't know what the difference is between those two. I'll need to learn. It does a non-interactive solve, which is like the detection stuff, and then it will fall back to, I think, showing you something for an interactive solve, but I think it's just a checkbox, which it's had 24 non-interactive solves, 0 interactive solves, and 14 fails. So that's probably in the matter of 12 hours. No, 16 hours. So I'll follow up, but interesting offering. Big problem out there dealing with bots and spammers and privacy non-protecting large organizations that provide us free tools. So we'll see what happens. All right, up next, let's talk about updates from the 92nd Tc39 meeting, which I think was Nick's.
It was. Yeah, I put this in there.
Update us.
Well, I actually just need to have a conversation about it because I put this in there and then I didn't learn about
read
these. I did. I like specifically the thing that was interesting in there was the movement to stage 1 of something called extractors or extractor objects. And I was hoping that one of you could explain what this is to me, because I looked at it, I looked at the syntax, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like it did in one specific use case, but I'm not sure that I'm understanding it correctly. And so it says that this is like, there's prior art in like Rust and potentially Rust and like Scala. Scala has extractor objects. Are either of you familiar with extractors?
Well, Nick's extractors would augment the syntax of binding pattern and assignment pattern to allow for new destructuring forms, as in the following examples.
So looking at that, it looks like it's doing like the destructuring, like the object or array destructuring that you would normally like, or that we're all accustomed to now, hopefully in JavaScript. But in this case, they're calling like a method like foo on the property that they're destructuring. Is that just all it is? Is it a way to perform calculations like inline on a destructured value?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing here, is doing some sort of more complicated logic as you destructure, and some of that might even be like the I'm looking right now at what the Rust example is, like being able to match for more complicated structures than just like a very simple object, right? So like, okay, destructure into this, but only if A and B both exist and have this relationship to each other, or something like that, right? Like kind of pattern matching as a way to do branches in functions or things like that is a pattern that has not shown up in JavaScript that I'm aware of before, but is something that is I think pretty widely used in functional languages as a
but
way
isn't pattern matching also making its way through TC39 as its own feature? I think it is, but I'm not sure. I agree with you that seems like the intention of this is to do assignment and binding in a case where you're doing more logic in the actual expression, right? Because you're calling a function which can do some smarts,
Yeah.
whether that's match or condition, and then return what you're assigning to out of that, which is, I guess, a little bit kind of syntax sugar, because you could always just do that in a more verbose way by not doing that. But I mean,
Yep.
still could be
Destructuring
handy
is
and-
syntax sugar, and it's wonderful.
It is.
Makes for
I mean,
such more readable code.
it's more readable.
Let me try and give like a simple example. If I had like an object that had like an X property on it, and X is a string, and I wanted to, like normally what I would do is I would, destructure X, and then I would say like X dot to lowercase. Is this saying that I could just destructure and to lowercase it all in one line?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sold.
I think that's what it's saying. I said
I
that
think
very
that's what it's
confidently,
saying. And
but I
not
did-
only that, you could potentially coerce it, right? So you could say, this is coming
Right.
from 3 different types, and I'm going to coerce it to a string and lowercase it
Now, can you send it? So I would assume that logic, though, lives elsewhere
in an extractor object.
in an extractor object. Right.
That's what that foo is in this example.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So it's not like you can't just like do it with an anonymous function or something. I mean, maybe that's also in there, but you have to have this extractor object that you're defining elsewhere and then calling in the assignment expression.
Okay. And you define the matcher with a symbol. So you get to use all sorts of fun things that you hardly ever use in JavaScript.
That's it's stage 1 proposal. also.
Stage 1.
So like
Yeah,
this,
yeah, of
this is
course.
going to change how
This will
it
never happen.
looks. It may happen, but however it happens has very high likelihood to look nothing like the current syntax.
Right. This is a proposal that's very early on.
But I'm sold. I like that idea. There are several times where I think, man, I just have to, destructure something and then have another line to do some additional thing on it. And like if you're like setting it with const and you can't do that, like you'd have to like let it so that you can then change it later or assign it to another variable, and it's just
Are
messy.
you hating on let?
Yes, of course.
Why? It's
There's
so
a-
handy in that case.
There's a TypeScript reason for that, because const will narrow the types further for you, and let won't.
Not my problem, Nick. Not my problem. All right. So there's that. Stage 3 array.from async. Has anybody looked at this one, or should we move on to the next story? This looks like the other piece of information from this meeting.
I think this is a relatively simple one, and kind of moving to, once again, being able to make async stuff a little bit more first class. Be able to kind of do a set of awaits for an array of things.
Yeah, so it's the same thing as from, but it's in an async. It's from async. That's what I'm seeing here. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So stage 3 on that sucker. So where does it go from there? Stage 4?
Yeah, stage 3 would be it's getting implementations in like browser engines, and it's relatively stable at that point. Like it's very unlikely that the syntax will change at this point.
Gotcha. Hasn't made its way into can I use yet, unless I'm spelling it wrong or something. All right, so those are some notes. Those are some updates from the 92nd Tc39 meeting. You know what would be fun is we should maybe figure out when the 100th Tc39 meeting is and like everybody crash it, Wouldn't that be kind of
Yes.
cool? I mean, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Like maybe like a few thousand people show up to the meeting. It's a Zoom meeting, right? I don't know what it is.
Is there a way we could do like a flash mob style thing? So not
That's what I'm
only do
talking about.
people show up, they like do something.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll coincide with the like the advancement of the type annotations proposal, and we can like stage like a sit-in until they approve it or something.
We're not leaving. This dog might hunt. Let's continue to riff on this idea. So, dear listener, if you have ideas around how we might make their 100th meeting very special, whether it be a protest or a party, we're up for anything. Let us know in the comments or on Twitter. Okay, let's go back to another story. Linkify shipped their version 4.0. Have you guys heard about Linkify?
Nope.
Okay.
No, not before this.
Yeah, this is a cool plugin. It seems like a common problem that lots of people have. It's just a JavaScript plugin, and it takes well-formed plain text and linkifies it. So maybe you have some bare URLs in there. Maybe you have some hashtags. Maybe you have an @ mention. And you just want to take that plain text, pass it off to some library, and end up with like hyperlinks integrated into that, all prettified, all linkified. That's what Linkify does. So the news, I guess, is that they've shipped version 4, which means they've been iterating a lot or making a lot of breaking changes if they're just semantic versioning. Because, V4, that's a big number. But it's been around for a little while. It works server side, I think, and browser side. And so you can use it in server side rendering. No cost to your users. You can ship it in the browser, and I'm not sure what it's going to cost them. It'll cost them a little bit. But your own code would also cost them something as well. This is the kind of thing that we all kind of unit test. Like, it's a nice, usually simple starting, a couple of regex, unit test it, and I'm good to go. And there's just tons of hairy little edge cases that end up biting you. And you have to write lots of unit tests over time and slowly learn where your linkifying broke. So cool to see a community project here, an open source thing where everybody can work on the same thing and solve a lot of those problems. They have lots of cool little features where like you can configure it to like add attributes like no follows or rel equals UGC, those kind of things. So that if you're using on user generated content and you're linkifying their strings, the spam bots will leave you alone because they're not going to get their SEO juice. So that's Linkify. Thoughts?
My first thought immediately, because the example is like showing this you working in Markdown, and to continue my discussion of Obsidian on this podcast, there is an Obsidian plugin. I found that, and it's awesome. You can just like put in your own syntax for like, I can put GH : and then I could just have like something, and it will just linkify that to a GitHub link to specifically what I want it to be. Just
that's cool. So you just configure it for yourself and use it. That's neat.
Yeah, it looks like, I'm looking through it, so it looks like it's very configurable. So you can kind of look for and match against different like types of domains or different, if you have like @ mentions, you can decide, is that going to GitHub or Twitter, or maybe you do a little bit of checking in some way. You could probably add your own stuff. So yeah, this looks neat.
Yeah. And they have like this test function as well. So that, they've obviously built up this huge matcher library of different strings and regular expressions. I'm not sure how it's implemented under the hood. Maybe there's like a AST down in there, a string AST that has all tests. And so you can actually even use it with linkify.test, pass it a string, and you can, is it a valid email? Is it a valid domain? Like these things that we end up implementing ourselves, you could rely on that in your test suite.
Some real-time follow-up. That Obsidian plugin is in no way using Linkify. So
it's not.
It's just
called
Linkify. The same name.
Okay, well, it's a good
still
name.
Cool.
So yeah, it's still noteworthy.
It does look like it's tokenized. I'm just looking at what it's doing right now. It looks like it's tokenizing the string. Does have some amount of like regex replacements for like escaping and things like that. Yeah. How is it?
Is it getting the KBall seal of approval? Is this a code review? Is how KBall does code review and its work?
We could do a code review. I'm being much more ad hoc than I would for my own, like for a real code review, but I'm just kind of like jumping in a little bit. So it looks like it has its own little tokenization logic. So it's
serious then.
It is serious. How is it doing this tokenizing? Let's see.
You can use it with React. You can use it with jQuery or directly with the browser DOM. I'm just filling in KBall's blank space while he reads code. All right, final code review, KBall. What grade do you give this?
It's definitely more robust than just a set of regexes. It's actually, it's doing kind of a robust, it has a state machine based parser it's going through. So This is better than you're going to write on your own.
Well said. Well said. All right, let's take a pause and come back with some more. All right, we are over time. Does anybody have a hard stop? I do not.
Nope.
KBall's got the day off, but we're cutting into his hike. We can continue then. Anybody have any particular favorites you want to go through here? We have Enhance, the Beta React docs, TypeScript 4. California Pay Transparency Law, Figma, Penpot. KBall, what would you like to talk about out of this list? Let's pick 2 or 3.
Figma and Penpot.
Okay,
Yeah, that's on my list.
sweet. Full disclosure, I don't know what Penpot is, so y'all are gonna have to carry me or introduce me.
It's just an
I've
SVG alternative to Figma.
Oh, okay. Now I know. What do I? You guys are no longer necessary. Thanks. So do we do those 2 together then?
I think so.
Okay.
I think Penpot as a coverage item is a reaction to the Figma news.
Gotcha. Okay.
You don't want to talk about Satisfies?
I can't get no satisfaction. If there's still time, maybe we'll talk about the beta React docs. All right. Well, in big news, sort of old news at this point, but big splash was the Adobe acquisition of Figma for 20 bills. No, that's not $20. That's $20 billion. A large price tag. One of the largest tech acquisitions, I think, of all time. I know Slack, I think, was 27 billion. But, you know, these are huge numbers. And for me, was a total surprise. I don't know if you guys saw this one coming. I mean, I think the acquirer, in retrospect, is obvious. But I just didn't think we'd see a big acquisition, especially with the state of the market. So what was your guys' initial reactions to the Figma acquisition?
Well, shit.
Yep.
Well said.
Also, I know a guy over at Figma. All right, he's rich now.
Good for him. Yeah.
Good for him. I mean, so actually, let me put a little bit color around my well shit.
It's already pretty colorful.
I'm less concerned about the future of the core design tool. I think Adobe actually, for all that their stuff gets pretty complex, they care deeply about the core design tools. They've done a reasonably good job on historic tools. I think they're going to invest in it because Figma is a really good thing that fits well into their wheelhouse. What I'm more concerned about is, FigJam and a range of things like that. So I love FigJam. It's like built on the Figma engine, but it's just this very simplified UI, and it's for like brainstormings and other type of things. It's like an infinitely better version of whatever Google's Jamboard thing is, right? It is like 1,000 times better than Jamboard, and I use it all the time. I use it for myself for organizing thinking. I use it to run different types of meetings and conversations. Like it is, for a distributed team, it's a phenomenal tool. And I don't know that it fits in Adobe's wheelhouse. Like, I don't know that it's something they're going to care about, keep investing in, or anything. I also, I had a conversation with some folks at Figma the last time I was kind of looking around for possible other jobs, which I ended up deciding, no, I like it where I am. But, they were looking at all sorts of other takes like that of where can we take this core engine of Figma and apply it in sort of a limited or specialized way to a particular problem domain, which I think is a really, really, really cool area and not something that feels like Adobe's approach. And so I think we may end up missing out on a lot of potentially cool innovation that could have happened around that. And I'm terrified that we're going to lose FigJam because I love that tool.
I had never used FigJam, and this is awesome.
I've never heard the word FigJam until a few minutes ago.
Same.
If you lead discussions in a distributed setting, it will change your world. It is absolutely freaking phenomenal.
It looks a lot like Miro, which is something that I'm more familiar with, but
It's
I
kind
like
of,
this.
yeah, Miro has some similarities. FigJam is better.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, when I heard this news, I was pretty excited because now my daughter will have some software keys to share with her friends during high school for Figma, like I did with Photoshop.
Nice.
I mean, I never did that.
Well, now we don't know what to believe, Nick. Did you or didn't you?
If you're a lawyer or seeking litigation, I never did that. This is
Right.
not an admission.
Well, I mean, we do think probably Adobe seeded a lot of those keys into the world, you know, because then they get you hooked real young when you don't have any money. And then you love Photoshop. Then you get older, start making some money, and you're like, oh, maybe I should pay for this.
did.
Brilliant. A masterstroke, if that's what they did. But
It worked perfectly for me. I was like, man, this is amazing. And then I got Pixelmator. And
yeah. So I'm an Adobe user now, begrudgingly at first. And I've grown to appreciate a lot of their tools. They're definitely complex and have steep learning curves and are so non-web. You know, they're so pre-web tools that this was an, like I said, once I heard it, I was like, well, that's a really good move for Adobe, even though their stock dropped to match, like it's dropped 20 billion or something, something like that. The investors didn't like the move, at least initially, but it seemed like a smart move for Adobe because they have a lot of great engineers over there and some really top of the market software, but it's not webby, and they're getting their lunch eaten by Figma, as the price tag indicates. And so good for them. I hope they're good stewards of it. I have no idea about FigJam or whether or not that's going to continue to be a thing. I hope it is for your sake, KBall. But I guess tying into this news is there's now this other thing, right? PenPot, which raised a big round of funding. I know that about it. I don't know much about PenPot, but I did see an announcement of funding in the wake of the Figma acquisition. So somebody tell us about PenPot and how this plays into the conversation.
yeah, I saw this probably on Hacker News or somewhere on the same day that the Figma news was released. And I mean, in a lot of ways, that was probably a reaction to this, to that news. But it looks very similar to my non-design eyes as Figma. But it is more SVG based, so it's built more on open standards.
Product Hunt, over 1,000 votes on Product Hunt. They raised a Series A. Design Freedom for Teams. They're calling it the first open source design and prototyping platform meant for cross-domain teams. Web-based and works with open standards, SVG. K-Ball, what do you know about PenPot?
Nothing.
Okay.
I like SVGs. I think, you know, if they can make it work, that's great. Open source design and prototyping platform for cross-domain teams. So one thing that I felt like Figma got really right was the collaborative aspect of it. They made sort of conversation about design a huge part of their approach. And this was how they ate Sketch's lunch, right? They realized that in a web world and in the design world, you're not creating these things in a vacuum. You are creating these things to share, to discuss, to talk about, to hand off. And so, you know, when they have both the commenting and discussion stuff built in, and also when you look at a component, you can like see exactly, you can annotate it, you can put all sorts of stuff about like what's the CSS and what are the different things there. I don't know what PenPot is or does, but I'm like scanning the video on their homepage and I don't see either of those aspects being shown up right now. And so to me, this feels like this is a solo design tool. It might grow into it, but if they're not thinking about not just the process of an individual creating design assets, but the the holistic design process, which is about communication and feedback and handoffs and all of those things, I don't think they're going to be able to compete.
So PenPot is completely open source. Looks like a pretty permissive Mozilla public license, web-based, and they say it's specifically for cross-domain teams. So I think that that's at least on
And
their
actually,
radar,
as
if not
it gets
an
to
emphasis.
later in the preview, I am seeing they did have some commenting stuff. So I guess it'll depend on how they execute it.
Yeah.
There. But yeah, that would be my. So few people are able to get that whole like collaboration process right, and Figma really did, and
Yeah.
I think that's what's made them excel.
Well, will be interesting to watch, see how Adobe handles the acquisition and the takeover and what happens with Figma from here. And I just think that we'll see more. Maybe PenPot is the one, but we'll see more competitors in this space as Figma laid the groundwork for what is clearly a better way of collaborating. And we know that one of the most expensive, cumbersome, and slow parts of the software development lifecycle is the integration point between design and dev. And like there's so much room for gains there and productivity wins and better collaboration, which produces better end products, that there's certainly room for more tooling. And we'll continue to see advancements as these things build out. All right, that's what's new and noteworthy. Any last links you guys just have to shove in there that don't have TypeScript in the title before we call it a show?
I feel like I'm being called out here. I had a TypeScript link.
I'm going to call out a non-tech one that I think is going to rock the tech world a little bit, which is this California pay transparency law.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
interesting.
California just signed or passed. What's the word I'm looking for? Passed a new law that California companies for California jobs have to post, all their job postings have to include pay ranges. We've already seen, during, before this most recent like mini bust that's going on, like we saw the kind of distributed world salaries skyrocketing in a lot of different places as they were able to, as more and more companies based in these high paying locations were hiring. But I think there's still probably a whole large amount of the tech world that does not realize how bloody much money Silicon Valley companies throw at developers. Like, it goes around periodically. If you work for big tech and you're like even a few years out of college, you're fully loaded, probably making $500,000. That's
okay, 300 to 500 is pretty typical, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks just have not internalized that, and this is going to change that, because suddenly these folks, it's going to be visible. And there's all sorts of interesting and weird ripple effects, right? Like those big tech companies can do that because they have massive revenue streams relative to employees, right? They have they have figured out businesses or business models where they get massive leverage on engineering employees. If that was the salary across the board, there's tremendous numbers of software businesses that today are viable that would not be viable, right? Because not everybody's able to make that amount of revenue per software engineering employee. And so this is going to I don't know, it's going to have some really interesting downstream.
How long do you think until we see ramifications of something like this? Like, are we talking 12 months, 18 months? You're talking about 5 years? Like, how long does it take for us to start to see this actually change the way people talk about these things, the way they hire, et cetera?
I think it depends a lot on the job market. So, we saw in the tight job market distributed world that we saw in 2021, we saw massive changes in the course of a year. Now everybody's doing layoffs and belt tightening and not hiring anymore and things like that. We may not see much for a while because jobs are a little bit more scarce. But the next time they get tight, that's when we're going to see extremely rapid change, I think, in this area in terms of what people are asking for. and they're going to have this benchmark now.
Right.
Does this
Power to the
just
people.
does this just affect like base pay? Is that something that they need to disclose, but not necessarily the other perks?
Individuals.
Let's see.
Yeah, the devil's in the details of that law and how it's actually going to be enforced and rolled out.
And depending on how that is, that might affect like how those are distributed. Like it might be lower or it might be higher base pay and then like different metrics on.
Right.
Unclear. It's unclear. Well, and it does create weird dynamics, right? Like, so you have Netflix, which is famous / infamous for they don't do RSUs, they don't give out stock, but they have sky high salaries. So mostly when you're hearing that 300 to 500 range for like a big tech company, like maybe 150 of that is in salary and the rest is RSUs. Maybe it's a little higher if you're more senior, things like that, but like most of it's in restricted stock units, which is a fun like tax accounting game and all this other stuff. Netflix, it's in bloody cash. Like a lot of the engineers there are getting 500 grand in cash each year.
Will be interesting to watch. All right, we gotta end it, but Nick, I'll throw you a freaking bone here. TypeScript 4.9 beta satisfies. Is this a statement or is that a feature? What's going on here with the satisfaction?
I'll be quick on this, but in 4.9 they're adding a new satisfies keyword so that you can say like you can define that this object or whatever satisfies some type that you define later, but it does so in a way that doesn't affect how that type is then like used or narrowed later on. And so like previously we have this as keyword, which is like what's that term from like other languages where you cast,
Typecasting?
you're like casting it.
Casting, yeah.
You're casting to something else. You can do that in TypeScript. They have like the traditional like angle bracket cast syntax, but also they have this as keyword so that it plays better with like React, like the JSX. And now they have this satisfies keyword, which will do the same thing. So I can say like, oh, this object satisfies this interface or whatever, but it won't actually like change that. So if you said that it was, if you're satisfying this requirement that this be a key value pair where the key is a specific key like red, green, or blue, and the values are, a string or a number, when you're not casting to that, so that when you do a check later, you're doing like, oh, my object dot red is equal to a string or a number. Like it won't cast it to be either a string or a number for that value. It'll be the actual value that it is, that it knows that it is, being number or string, so that you can do like number operations or string operations directly on it without having to do an additional check. So it's just some syntactic sugar on top of that. It's a little bit more of an intelligent casting in that it won't mess up the types that you already have. And as I learned this morning, you can chain those. So I can say like satisfies this constraint, and then after that do satisfies this constraint, and it'll like block on either of those. And it's just proving that TypeScript gives you more satisfaction.
So if I understand correctly, it's allowing you to make more type assurances without manipulating the types of what's coming down.
Exactly. Yeah. So like you can say like, going back to my 2 lowercase, you could say like my object.red.2 lowercase. And you can do that because you know that you set red as a string value, like a hex value or whatever. And then like my object.blue, you set as a number, meaning like, I don't know, a number value. You can't do 2 lowercase on a number. And so it'll like throw an error at you if you try and do that on blue specifically. Whereas if you did the casting of it, the value would be either string or number, and you would have to further narrow the type on your own before you could do either of those operations. Whereas with satisfies, you can ensure that you're meeting whatever like type that you're wanting to meet without actually affecting that and having to do more manual type narrowing later on.
So looking at Jerod's face and knowing that he doesn't work with TypeScript very often, I think the only thing that can be said here is he can't get no satisfaction.
This is a whole bunch of interesting tidbits about code that never actually runs at runtime. So more.
Isn't the
TypeScript
type
did
strip?
this.
Didn't somebody show that the type system itself is Turing complete?
Yes. There's some fun examples of that too. There is a I forgot the name of that game, but like the text-based game adventure where you like type in like look left and then it tells you looked left and you saw a wall or you saw a door. You know
There's
what
a
I'm
lot
talking
of
about?
those, yeah. But like,
Yeah. Somebody
Right.
did that in the type system. So you just like append
Yes, they
types of
did.
like,
TypeScript text
Yeah.
adventure. I saw that.
it's amazing.
I just feel like, we built this this house of cards. And then we took like a bunch of popsicle sticks and we're like trying to frame it up around the outsides with the popsicle sticks. And TypeScript is the popsicle sticks. And that just leads us to one last thing to say.
JavaScript should be destroyed.
As always, Chris gets the last word. And we really can't top that. This has been JS Party. All the links to all those things are in your show notes. If you haven't subscribed yet, hey, maybe consider subscribing. We got some really cool episodes coming down the pipeline. Docusaurus is coming up. We have Kevin Powell, the great CSS-based YouTuber, coming on the show. A couple of book authors, Martine Dowden and Michael Guerin, talking about tiny CSS projects. We've got Thomas Steiner coming on, talking Project Fugu from Google. So lots of interesting guests. And of course, we always mix in fun and roundtable discussions. And whatever this one was, we mix these kind of ones in as well throughout. So subscribe to the pod if you haven't yet. And that's all. Any final words from you guys? I guess I said Chris gets the final word, but then I happened to open it back up again. Move quickly.
I gotta try my mimicking this time. JavaScript should be destroyed.
You did not just say that.
That's a great idea. I'm glad I had it.
All right. That is our show. We will talk to you on the next one. Did not just say that. I had that one. Oh, I do have that one. All right.
Awesome and hilarious.
You did not just say that.
I'm pretty
You
proud
did
that I was.
not just say that.
I'm pretty proud that I'm the person that prompted her to put that out there. I can't remember what I said, but it must have been ridiculous. You did not just say that. That's great. All right. Well, KBall, you're still not on our soundboard, but you're not going to make it on there either by just imitating other people. You got to come up with your own one-liners.
That is not my particular skill.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well,
If
we'll
it
say
happens, it
goodbye.
happens, but it's not. Yeah.
I'm sure you've said soundboard worthy things in the past, but not everything gets picked up, All right. I will say goodbye to the live listeners. See you later. Next Thursday is the Docusaurus episode with Sebastian Lorber, author
Awesome.
of Docusaurus. So